Yeah, good evening. I'm Gerald Auten, the director of the Studio Art Exhibition Program, and I'd like to welcome you to the Fall 2024 Artist in Residence Lecture featuring Rita McBride. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that the Black Family Visual Arts Center, where we gather today, is situated upon the ancestral and unceded lands of the Abenaki people. And please welcome Rita McBride.
Thank you, Jerry. Hi, everybody. Hello. Nice to see you again today. Some of you have already been through a couple of rounds of talks, and I'm happy to see some more people. I'm in a pretty gratitudinal mood at the moment, so I'm gonna start with some thanks, with a big thanks to Jerry for the initial invitation to this really wonderful opportunity as artist in residence. It's been an honor and a super pleasure. It's been inspiring. I also want to thank all the colleagues of the Department of Visual Arts and Tricia for the enthusiasm and the welcoming spirit that I felt this whole time. I had, are there some images up? Yes. Okay. A big surprise for me was starting to make photography while I was here. And that started with a tour that Jack gave me of the Nervi buildings, which I was very interested in seeing. And they just happened to be under construction. So we were up on the roof. It was like, I don't know, very inspiring. And then he took me around the campus and we had a wonderful tour, and this started my eye being focused again to photography of buildings and architecture and the relationship of myself to that, which had started in the early 90s, and in the exhibition Nuts and Bolts next door, it's those photographs that are there from the early 90s, and I have not photographed since then. These are just with my phone, so it wasn't like a big adventure with a tripod and that kind of planning, but a kind of gathering of observations of different combinations and absurdities that I love, and I find a humorous aspect when walking through cities, especially, and thinking about modernism and the built environment of urban cities around the world. I think these images exist because of Dylan in the photography workshop, who has been so helpful with Juliana. That's been such a pleasure, Dylan. Thank you so much for helping print them and making them actual, not just in my camera. I also would like to shout out to Chris and the seminar students that came with Tricia and Jerry to Dia Beacon on a really nice trip we had. I'm going to talk about that project a little later. And the interns for our studio exchange last week, which was really wonderful, spending the afternoon with you and then having you in the studio, the artist in residence studio, and hearing your thoughts about images, which these were the images that we were talking about. And the topic for us was about how can an image be impactful today? What does it mean to make an image in a world where there are so many images and Instagram, et cetera? And we didn't have any answers, of course, but it was a wonderful conversation for me, and I hope we can continue to think about what our role is, what the role of photography is, or image making. I think in general I'm more comfortable with moving images, actually. So there's something about the static image has always been a little bit scary for me. But I didn't feel this way in the studio here. I think there was so much light coming through and dancing around the space and making it so lively and so inspiring. So most of the photographs are taken from the studio windows. So it's very classical, which surprised me in the sense it's an artist in their studio, and of course I was reflected in the facade quite often, which was horrific for me to be in any photos, artists in studio shot. But I really found it enjoyable to work with my surroundings in a very, very focused way, and also did a series of rubbings of the chairs, the Bertoa chairs that are in that space, and some of the electrical units on the floor, and some of the grates around town. So it just was, never did rubbings before, I really enjoyed building a vocabulary that was much more intimately related than I usually do, which would be in a larger context of modernism and the politics of cities and the diversity of inhabitants, et cetera, which I still find an incredible luck that I started working on that 40 years ago, because there's enough information there to continue for a long time. So I have the fluidity of working from an intellectual and conceptual position with a lot of visual input constantly to draw from and to analyze and think about and perhaps recreate. Is that the last image on the, okay, great. I want to shout out to Chad, who was a big help to making this a very smooth and wonderful residency. And I have some more thank yous. I thank John and the Hood Museum for pizza today. Lovely, lovely to gather in the museum. Switching to another project that we started in April with Jerry and the residency, which is this publication. So the residency comes with this time in a beautiful place, with the interaction and engagement of everyone in this community, and includes a publication, which we started in April, I think. It was a kind of nicely complicated and simple at the same time, with very talented writers and very talented designers. So that's another thank you to Francoise and Frank. I don't know if they're here, but they were the designers, which was a great process. It's a tiny book, but it takes a lot of work, to make it special. David and Anna were editors on this book and also contributed, as well as Jerry and myself, and 17 in total. The idea of the book was that it is relational to two other books that I've made, which are kind of like field guides or manuals to all my works. And I have 2 volumes, and I'm making a third one now, but I was able to edit from the first volume to the second volume things that I was no longer interested in, or I was embarrassed by, or bored with. So I wanted to extend that to the writers that wrote a lot in those catalogs and other publications, to consider a new format for their writing. Much of their writing was very art historical and formal, so it would have a very long text. And I thought, okay, again, and thinking about how we read today and what is interesting for us and how I've been reading things lately, which was just to go for the introduction and then straight to the endnotes, sort of like missing a large argument debate in the middle. So I asked everyone to consider editing their text to an introduction and an endnote. And this was pretty difficult, but we had brilliant editors, and some of us wrote brand new that Anna never wrote before for publication of mine. The rest of these contributors are curators and directors from different institutions around the world. So let me see. I think I'm going to start with my contribution, and then ask David and Jerry let's see, David and Anna and Jerry to read after me. Our game. Please allow me to introduce myself. I am an artist of various colors and feats. I have sympathy for many and some. I have been around for a long, long time. You may even know my name. I have 3 favorite things to which I devote a lot of time. Travelogues and Civic Pride Day celebrations are the top 2, and to be honest, group projects get me out of bed every morning. Being lost in foreignness is particularly stimulating, especially when pairing outfits with potential life scenarios. Architecture could rank as my #1 occupational therapy. In fact, I am more excited about photos of architecture than photos of cats. I crave gravity. it helps me understand more about why things are the way they are. Large things, small things, public things. I hope you can guess my name. I consider myself a domino machine, a proud hostage of Corb and Co. I mean, how could I resist the contradictions that intellectual masterminding provokes every second, every mile, every terabyte? It is really impressive how real estate has manipulated and maintained a grip on our social structures. Lifestyle, 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 above all. Testimonies, there are many and few. Allusions abound, adapted, repeated in vain in succession. This publication, Nuts and Bolts, is full of kind and intelligent remarks from wonderful colleagues who have supported and reintroduced my art contributions on multiple occasions. My auction record does not exist. My works are in major public collections around the world and grace traffic circles in multiple countries. I am particularly fond of working with public processes, but most of you know less about that contrast and central part of my practice than the body of sculptures, which represents only a fraction of my oeuvre. Of course, this is from not being monetized. I am still puzzled by the nature of our game. Pleased to meet you. Can you spare a dime? For me, this was, I wrote it as an AI voice. I don't know if I projected that correctly tonight, but I did practice all day, but it didn't really work, I think. Anyway, yeah, and kind of hoping to convey an idea of being known and the relationship with capitalism and monetization of being recognized and having. I forgot to read the endnotes, so I'm going to come back for a second. So the first endnote is, in the film 1+1, Sympathy for the Devil, directed by Jean-Luc Godard in 1968, an early scene has the camera crew following the character Eve Democracy. It is mimicked in the movie's last scene when the camera crew is on the beach and one man asks, "What are they doing over there?" To which another answers, "I think there's something shooting a movie." A large camera crane is positioned on the bench, and a woman in a white dress is laying down on the platform at the end of the crane and elevated along with a movie camera until she is well above the beach. She does not rise up, but remains motionless, half hanging off the crane, one leg dangling. Endnote 2. Situated in Poissy, a small commune outside Paris, the Villa Savoie is one of the most significant contributions to 20th century architecture. Largely completed in 1928 to 1931, Le Corbusier's masterpiece is a modern reiteration of a French country house, one that celebrates and reacts to the new modern age. The elevation above the site permits its design to be integrated into the mechanistic industrial context of the early 20th century, conceptually defining the house as a machine à habiter. Thank you. So, David, do you want to do it again?
Thank you, Rita, and good evening. My name is David Gray. I'm an art historian, and I'm also an editor. But my primary qualification for being here tonight is I've been friends with Rita McBride for more than 30 years. So I'm going to be reading an introduction from a book called My Ways. It was a series of 4 collaborative novels as a project initiated by Rita and the Whitney Museum. So, the site-specific installation artist Gina Ashcraft debuted her public writing in 2001 with the collaborative novel Naked Came the 4 Stars, published by Kunstmuseum Liechtenstein. Shortly thereafter, she was approached to write for Kunst für dich. There, she formed her famous Aunt Gina self-help page for artists, a celebrated monthly column written largely by artists for artists. Ms. Ashcraft wrote that she needed a Gina-rama, and what a pleasure when the others do half the writing for you. It certainly beats sitting in your studio organising moving 1,000 tons of titanium around the planet. Later, in a file marked confidential, she admitted to writing the questions and answers herself, once or twice following my mantra of self-invention as self-awareness. Sometimes she even let a friend do the whole damn thing when I was too tired, drunk, or freaked out to answer at all. I am a site-specific artist, after all, when all is said and done. The Aunt Gina column may appear rather contradictory, even disruptive, but Ms. Ashcraft was fascinated by contradiction and was never concerned with forcing readers to suspend their disbelief. Unafraid of sudden mood swings or bizarre rantings, she did not shy away from absurd references to herself and the perverse international art world she inhabited. Indeed, it was through these references and absurdities that she constantly reminded the readers that they were not reading about real life, but spectacle. The present selection was largely chosen by Ms. Ashcraft before her timely death in a boating accident off the Florida Keys. Found on her desktop in a file headed, "I Did It," the following pages are a testimony not only to Ms. Ashcraft's attempts to deal with themes and problems that are usually left to other disciplines, but also to her brilliance and compassion as an artist and a human being. That was written almost 18 years ago. This is the pendant that was written this year. As many suspected, Ms. Ashcraft did not pass, and definitely not in Florida. It was no time to die. She chose to conceal herself in a myriad of personalities, forms, and nom de plume. Confounding expectations, she continues to sculpt, write, and love. Her willing co-artists, co-authors, co-editors, and co-conspirators have been corralled into art history, fiction, sci-fi, and porn. Yes, you, Gina Asscrack. They loved it, and they still do. Clandestine meetings on private islands and in skanky bars have produced a panoply of books, exhibition catalogues, artist books, CDs, chronologies, calendars, cards, ephemera, and unclassifiable documents. But what was most profoundly manifested? It was horizontality, individuation without hierarchy, and collaboration. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Hard to follow that one, but I'm Anna Budniewski, and I had the pleasure to choose the works for this exhibition that you have here in the building. So my text is also about that show. I'm gonna switch one more. Rita McBride's Nuts and Bolts. A list of abstract aspects as practical ideas. Space. Passing through double swing doors in chrome-framed glass, a room full of light opens up. Bright yellow wood outlines the windows and forms the baseboard for white walls that project out beyond the building's structure. On the white ceiling, silver and black track systems provide additional lighting. The illusion of an old, dark stone wall beneath the large corner windows gives this exhibition space its distinctive character. Awning without attics, 1995. Mural print mounted on masonite, 12 by 72 inches. Context. The works of art in this exhibition are full of complex references to its physical infrastructure. By representing necessities or mimicking usability, they prompt an aesthetic encounter with the space and its functionality. Conversely, they encourage a structural understanding of the art. This balancing act, operating between form and function, is like switching lights on. It broadens the perception of both the art and the architecture by incorporating their institutional dimensions. Calculations and Abbreviations, 1998. Mural print mounted on masonite, 112 by 45 inches. Reality. I'm not interested in the image, McBride says, scanning the world around her. To her, photography is an equivalent to sculpture, a tool to translate subjects into objects. By leveling the choice of media and shifting attention to the materials, the artist allows the generative sources to come to the fore. As the artworks and the space they occupy are rooted in the same world and share common origin, they develop a new life together, an almost deceptively genuine reality. Hexcelerator Mini, 6, 2005. Aluminum, stainless steel, and carbon fiber. 4 3/8 by 10 5/8 by 15 3/4 inches. Scale. The relationship between artistic depiction and its worldly referent is meticulously designed by McBride. So too is the choreography of the room, guided by the interaction of bodies and objects. Variation and alteration of proportions and positions within the present objects, especially their surprising sizes and dimensions, direct specific movements that generate new viewpoints. Discovering new perspectives, literally and metaphorically, becomes a game. Nuts and Bolts, 2006. Face-mounted inkjet print, framed, 36 by 24 1/4 inches. Time. A cosmopolitan by conviction, constantly traveling through diverse cultures and time zones, McBride has conceptualized her works to perform similarly. Her language and aesthetic are international and intergenerational. For over 3 decades, these works have been contemporary. Her life in constant simultaneity informs her work. Reciprocally, her artworks demand constant momentum. Vent, 2010. High-pressure laminate on MDF, aluminum vent grill. 103 3/8 by 45 1/4 by 45 1/4 inches. Affirmation. The number of works McBride has created and projects she's been involved in is immense. As a female artist, her motivation to seize every opportunity is courageous, but also fully conscious and deeply political. Her strategic affirmation not only opens dialogues, creating platforms and staging propositions on them, but also indirectly equalizes all opportunities. From the very beginning, a non-hierarchical, democratic approach to art has been at the core of McBride's artistic practice. Her belief in possibilities serves as its engine. Endnote, repeat as needed.
Thank you, Anna.
Gerald Auten. Parking. Parking ramps are a fairly recent architectural typology, introduced about a century ago. The ceilings are uncomfortably low, and there's this unnerving aspect of strangers moving peripherally between parked cars and columns and disappearing around corners. The experience is always cinematic to me, no doubt partly due to their use as sinister plot stages in films such as Get Carter, P2, and my favorite, Fargo. Steve Buscemi, after being shot, rolls up to the kiosk and while keeping his jaw intact with his hand screams, "Open the fucking gate!" It's one of my favorite film scenes. I saw McBride's Parking Garage, M, 2011, at her Generatives exhibition at Conrad Fisher recently. Beautifully wrought in bronze, it has a diminutive scale that seems to enable you to hold it in your hands, almost. Had it been placed on a pedestal, it could have been read as a high-end architectural model. Instead, it was situated on the floor in a near-empty room, subverting any conventional reading. The relationship this placement establishes between viewer and object, and the literal and phenomenal distance between the two, is key to its seductive charm and strange curiosity, a sort of apprehension on steroids. Note 1. Close-hand looking loses the thing seen, becomes temporal. To get a good look at something, we back up, we make the thing small. And to remember it? Elizabeth King, Attention's Loop, a sculptor's reverie on the coexistence of substance and spirit. Note 2, that wild connection with something mysterious and strangely sexy, which crackles just below the surface of everything. Caitlin Johnson, The Silence of the Artist, Consortium News. Thanks.
You, Jerry. It's so nice to hear these spoken by the authors. Thank you. We can go to a parking garage image. I asked a lot of you in the last weeks what you would like me to talk about, because there's many topics I'm interested in and can talk for hours. So I wondered if what you were particularly interested in. I got the feedback that you would like to hear how I began and some trajectory of the last 35 years. This was the first object I made. Because I went, as I said, I went to CalArts for graduate school, and with a highly theoretical study. I actually really didn't. I made a couple of very large things, but once I left CalArts, I moved to Madrid, and was trying to get in touch with a more poetic aspect of working, because it was so cynical at CalArts, and Jeff Koons was had hit the scene and was completely perfect at what he was doing, and that's all these things we were working on at CalArts somehow. The value of objects, the market, the cynicism of that. So I felt like, okay, I'm going to go to Europe and try and find some. I was particularly interested in an artist, Juan Munoz, which you have a piece of at the Hood, who I felt was someone who had a very critical and intellectual but poetic position visually in sculpture. I rented a place in Madrid. I didn't have a stipend. I had no structure. I taught English for money, and made an architectural model of a parking garage, so out of plexiglass. And then 2 years later, I was able to cast it in bronze when I was at the L'Accademia Americana in Rome with the Rome Prize. And so this was cast in Rome. And I really want to emphasize how hard it was for me to find something to make it, what could I make an object? I was so anti-object. This was not, objects are things you stare at and you dissect, and it's such a hardcore gaze without any, it's like surgery on a poor object. I always felt sorry about that relationship to looking and to experiencing objects. But I knew that I had to survive as an artist, and I better make an object that could possibly go in a gallery and possibly make a sale and pay my rent for 1 month, something like that. So it was really suffering. I'll jump very quickly now. So I because of my interest in cities, I noticed that parking garages are the same pretty much all around the world from a certain century onwards. So they're just, I considered them money machines. They're just they're slabs of real estate that cost money to put your car in and come out. That this clarity of I could make this as a trophy. That's why I chose bronze. Like it's a real fetish material for sculpture. So remember, this is like a 28-year-old thinking through like what makes our work. And it's very hard also to call yourself an artist when you're just getting out of school. You have no idea how that works exactly. So I was kind of checking off the boxes. It has to be a certain sculptural material. It has to have an objectness. And for my own sanity and kind of conceptual beginnings, it has to have this kind of element, which is critically aware of what this market is. I went on to make quite a few, not so many, and went on to make their sand cast, which is very different from lost wax. So I liked the idea that they could just replicate each other. I mean, I could make as many levels as I wanted if I had the money. So I think the highest I ever got was maybe like 10 stories in aluminum. And the rest, the minimum had to be 3 to really articulate this like kind of very modernist slab architecture that is basically great for making money. I think those were the elements. I kind of stopped making them. I still have a lot of them. Some of them are wall pieces. They're just the basic structures of the ramps, the circulation, and the square meters or square footage of the places for cars. Parking garages were also very interesting for me because it's related to the car, which is also such a standard, let's say, definitive structure for our environments. I mean, our urban streets and urban renewals and the kind of ever expanding and changing identity of a city. The first show, I guess, yeah, the first show I did out of Cal Arts while I was living in Madrid, but I came back to LA to do this show, was at Margot Levin Gallery, and actually I produced these works in the Philippines. There's 3 rattan pieces. This is the double helix spiral staircase. It's a modular, which it's always floor to ceiling. This is a Toyota Celica rattan piece, full scale from the 80s. So this was a design shift I noticed from like kind of boxy modernist Volvos to all of a sudden these kind of turgid profiles for cars. And there's 2 towers from rattan also. I had the idea for this material because it is like a lightweight, super strong sculpture material, and it's like spaghetti. When you heat it with water or steam, it can be anything, and you just have to bind it, and it stays a super lightweight, very strong, but it will go back. If you don't bind it correctly, it will return to another form. And I thought, as a typical kind of arrogant American kid, I thought, oh, I can get raw rattan in the United States, which wasn't true at all. I had been interested in the complicated kind of reading of a material that was used mainly for cheap furniture. But it was such a great material and such a possibility for sculpture. But I found out that you can't get the raw material in the United States. So I went to the Philippines with a whole set of full-scale drawings. Because like with the Toyota, I had made a template for each line that would be like each curve, because they have to use fire tests. And there were 3 people working with me on this over a summer in Manila. I think this is something I can't even believe that I'm still alive from that experience. In fact, it was quite dangerous at the time, which was, the late 80s. There was a lot of, the Peace Corps it was a very volatile place. But from there, I continued with my exploration of a lot of different materials, sizes, scales, installations. And the next slide is from the Sculpture Center in Long Island City when it did different than it is now. They had an open space in the back, or next to it, I installed these different vocabularies, like HVAC systems that I made on the Bowery. They're not off the shelf. They're actually different dimensions. That's the painted OSHA orange. So this like very specific coloration for building. These are glass conduits, these glass pieces going up the side of the wall. They're made in Murano. These are skylights from bronze and from aluminum cast in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. And the copper piece is also made in Brooklyn, a very, very beautiful, I'm very proud of this work because it goes together without any hardware. They slide in, all the panels slide in, and it's easy to take apart and it folds together. These are kind of things that I learned, like for example, the big towers of Rattan. I was so young, I didn't realize it had to go through doors, right? Like, so it has a limited life because it can't go through every door. But then I started thinking about how you can break down the pieces because I obviously like to work in large scale, and I always have. So the small object is something that I never have really been attracted to fulfilling, and I have no desires for it, actually. And this is an awning structure, which some of you saw in Die Beacon. That's part of, I did quite a few awnings, which for me represent this kind of transitional space of a city when a building is used for one purpose and then it changes. It doesn't become a whole new building, but it has a temporary signage. These are kind of gone these days. I noticed there's not a whole lot of awnings anymore, but this was made also on the street in the Bowery in New York. They used to make these awnings just in front of the new museum, but it was like a manufacturing area first. I also put in this wooden walkway and was thinking a lot about kind of like a Japanese orientation to a Japanese garden. So it has an overview, almost like a bird's eye view when you're standing on it and looking at the skylights. So that's a kind of representation of some of the vocabulary that I continued working with. I don't remember what's next, but good. So speaking of Die Beacon, I wanted to talk about this project called Arena, which is a tribune, you can see, made from wood and Kevlar, a sandwich of wood and Kevlar. So Kevlar is that high-tech material that's bulletproof. And it added a lot of strength to this piece, which has been around the world. And it still looks great and is still working very well. The hardware is customized in this piece. I'm showing here the arena when it's full and the arena when it's empty, and this difference that I'm completely fascinated by what an arena is. And recently it was purchased by DIA under the a copyleft status, which I'm going to explain to you. After, I think what else do I want to say about this? 1997, been around the world. It's a modular, 4 meter by 4 meter modular, so you can build a whole arena or half, but it interacts and intersects with architectures that it's inhabiting or being in. But you can see, like this one, it's freestanding. This is in Taipei, and also in Barcelona at MACBA, and these two are from DIA now. So it's been at DIA since July 2023, and we activated it 4 times in a program called Momentum, which is part of this copyleft status, which is, let's watch this film first before I try to describe what that is. Yeah, I think so, yeah, okay. This is a very nice series of clips that kind of incorporate the activities that we did in 4 iterations of activating Arena. Arena always came with a program, so it was never like just an object.
Tänk om konst på gränsen till arkitektur och design. 6 maj 2000 till 3 september 2000. Moderna Museet, Stockholm, Sverige.
Werkschau. 16. April bis 12. Juni 2000. Staatliche Kunsthalle Baden-Baden in Baden-Baden, Deutschland.
472 new positions. 8 September 2001, 13 January 2002. Museum de Pont, Tilburg, Nederland. In 1997 toonde Witte de Wit, Centrum voor Hedendaagse Kunst in Rotterdam, de arena van de Amerikaanse kunstenaar Rita McBride, Des Moines, Iowa, 1960. Arena is een grote ronde tribune die, verdeeld in segmenten, in 4 zalen stond opgebouwd.
Freitag, 21.06. Lesung Landschaft mit Josef Biedermann, Rektor Liechtensteinisches Gymnasium Vaduz und Hans-Jörg
Taipei Fine
Behaderer,
Arts Museum.
Maler und Buchkünstler, Dienstag, 25.06. Lesung Sprache und Ausgrenzung mit Matthias Oswald, Autor und Kabarettist, und Manfred Schlappert, Schriftsteller und Publizist. Freitag, 28.06. Lesung Wirtschaft mit Wilfried Owe, Volkswirt und Stefan Sprenger, Schriftsteller. Sonntag, 30.06. USA, 1979, 119 Minuten. Samstag, 13.07. Film Dogtown and Sad Boy von Stacey Peralta, USA, 2001, 97 Minuten. Montag, 15.07. Film Es geschah am helllichten Tag von Ladislao. Das modulare Stecksystem geht auf die Form des Amphitheaters zurück und besteht aus einer komplexen Schichtung von Sperrholz und Varon.
Contemporánea. La artista muestra una serie de imágenes las cuales construyen una narrativa que cuestiona y interpreta metáforas y símbolos. Dijo fin de septiembre a las 20 Miguel Nogura, en clave bien temporada y la rampa bien empanada
McBride arbeitet häufig in kollektiven
proyecto de Rita McBride. Nogura presentó una tríada de ideas de su ultra show y de sus ideas.
The world
Arena
as a
and
stage
Succession
includes
Tower are
numerous
seminal
large
works
installations,
that have never before been
sculptures,
exhibited
performances,
in North America.
participatory works, and events,
Mae
and
West
several
is a
new
new work
pieces
that
made
directly
specifically
confronts
for the
definitions of
exhibition.
architecture and sculpture
The
as
artists
monuments.
featured are
A
Paul
new installation in
Altsonner,
Sculpture
Cezary
Center's courtyard subtly
Bojanowski,
injects a hint
Ulla
of
von
spirituality into
Brandenburg,
the forms of modern
Jeremy
industry.
Deller, Trisha
Exhibition
Donnelly,
focuses on the
Jeffrey
issues and
Farmer,
intentions
Andrea
of Rita
Fraser,
McBride's work that are most
Dominique
influential to her
Gonzalez-Forster,
generation and those that
Jeppe
have
Hein,
followed.
Anna slowly slides down, Anna too, at an angle, Anna too in waves. The light and the music rise. I notice movement on the ground, skin and clothing, legs crossed. Several arrive from the south, the slow hug, the slow unhug.
That's the last image from that. Okay. So this, I'll just briefly say that dancers, I always realized that bodies are important in arena. After programming it with films, with many, many other activities, political debates, I felt like the main issue, or the main, like, what makes arena is bodies in the arena. So about 15 years ago, we started working with dancers, which was a serendipitous encounter with a choreographer from Germany named Alexandra Waierstall. Actually, she's shipped from Cyprus, who was invited by another curator to activate arena, and she put a dancer on the arena and had the audience not sitting. And the dancing was so incredible, so we started to collaborate, and most of the dancers you see there are from a group of dancers that started with us 15 years ago, and the movements are generated from the arena, from being on the arena, and rolling down the arena and climbing the arena. And they have 5 acts of kindness, gathering, separating, and you see. Then in these iterations, we had 12 dancers, and then also local dancers, and we watched the bodies. The dancers impart the body language of these kind of choreographed sequences that are in a feedback loop. They're not directed 1, 2, 3, 4. There's just a series of prompts that happen from the choreographer in a feedback loop from all of us involved in it, and they they gave that information, that body information, to local dancers from New York and from Beacon and elsewhere in the US. So a lot of the ones originally are from Europe and from Greece and Germany and England, etc. And it was so fascinating for me to see how quickly they can impart the body language of these choreographed prompts. Like in 1 hour. They never met each other, and they started to work on the arena. So the first one was 12, then there were 2, and the last one was, then there was a third one with I think 8 dancers, different constellations of dancers doing different things. And the last one, where some of you saw live, was the Discoteca Flaming Star. It's a very fragmented setup that was going on there. So that's Discoteca is Wolfgang and Christina, but it's an expanded, she was the one on the bass. I thought there was sound to this one. I should have just talked over it because it's quite complicated visually. Simultaneously in Berlin studio, did you see like these remote videos that had an arena in it that was built by Discoteca Flaming Star in their Berlin studio? And one of the dancers, Carolina, that was there in the first one, the first video, was dancing on that arena in Berlin. And there was someone drawing in the Berlin studio. Sophia was drawing Wolfgang, so that's the one who's acting like a male model, who is doing a male model poses and also drawing on himself. And then this rather corporal guy, Michael, he was he had like a line on his back, but he was following the lines of the drawings and walking around like following the lines of the drawings. I don't know if that's, but everyone's feedback looping and watching each other. So the people also playing sound, the electronics and the bass were looking at the screens and taking feedback loops. The sounds that were there from the beginning in October a year ago were sounds that were accumulated from sounds of being on the arena. So dancers, like movements and scraping of shoes, etc., like are all mixed into a soup of incredible soundscape, added with many iterations of different layers of places and people. So that I hope I'm not losing you, because it sounds really complicated to describe. I mean, in my head I'm kind of exploding with all the stimulus that is going on, especially in this last iteration. Why we did these was because of this copyleft status, which I'm going to read. This, by the way, is a poster designed by David Reinfart, and what they were doing in the first sequence was reading the history of all the places that Arena has been in the original languages, so that's what you heard them doing. This is meant to be kind of a manual, so you can make your own. Copylefts means that you can, I'm going to read the beautiful language involved with this. Arena is assembled from a modular elements that fit together to produce a temporary social space. The elements are drawn to scale on this poster. This plan includes 13 uprights, 10 ovals, 13 corners, 54 benches, 9 lengths, 6 of each. The digital files used to produce the original laser-cut composite fiber elements are made freely available by the artist through a copyleft license. This license provides the right to use the digital files as follows. No, the freedom to fabricate the work. 1, the freedom to study the work. 2, the freedom to copy and share the work with others. 3, the freedom to modify the work and to distribute modified and therefore derivative works. So that means you can ask Dia for the files to cut these digital, if you want. But I'm also very interested in the interpretation of these kind of democratic structures that are arenas, and your interpretation of them. So, so far we had a couple of people already do that, like especially students. A couple from Princeton made their own arena for their thesis and were participating in this last iteration. So one was in Berlin in the studio of Discoteca, and the other was plotting. He was like running the plotter, which was printing on the posters each time there was a new stage. So each time we did an iteration. So there's a copy, a special edition of the layers of activity building up. So the last poster has 4 different stages on it. And that's what you see the plotter doing. So it's pretty exciting. All of this is about trying to find conceptual parameters that are rather not so didactic, but sort of suggestive of how you can make your own arena and how you do the body part. So these kids from Princeton actually decided to use a body scanner. They built a body scanner and they scanned all different bodies and then put them on the wall, and were very interested in the scrapes and the remnants of people being on arena. This became very powerful for them. And the Discotheque built the arena in Berlin more like a poster. You know, like it was wood, but it looks more like these blue elements from the poster. You can interpret the arena any way you want, but we were trying to work with these performances, especially with bodies, so we have tons of data material to work with, and we're going onto a platform, which is already called Arena. It's not my platform, or it's another two people, and it's are.na. I know some schools use that as a platform for, it's kind of like a pin board. So if you're in a class, you can post things and everyone can see it. And I know that they use it at Princeton and at CalArts, and it was uncanny that it was called Arena, or are.na. So we're trying to gather now all this information and kind of essentialize it and give this kind of visual component, which helps to maybe inspire how you can navigate bodies and movement in structures, democratic structures. So that's pretty interesting. We're working with David Reinfeldt, who did the poster, as a brilliant designer and coder. And so we hope to do some very easy platforms so that it's a live archive. So if you make an arena, then you can also participate in this platform, and we can see what's going on, and we get feedback, which seems to be working pretty well at the moment. But we're gonna try and finish that platform, at least get the rhythm going by February, actually understand how it works, especially with moving images and things like that. But this is all about being able to do something remote and to be participatory and intimate at the same time, without having to ship like this one structure all the time, or I mean, this is, I'm super excited about it, and it's been a huge, mind-blowing experience to run through all this material and try to figure out what's important. The most interesting thing we found, especially, which is the feedback, we work on feedback loops, and at this moment there's so many people involved in it, I can't even count. But there's the feed. This is going too long, right? Maybe I should stop talking, but I just wanted to say that there's a really interesting feedback from one of the Princeton students who was in Berlin. So he was only being seen remote, and there were only 4 people there in Berlin. And he was talking about his experience as a spectator, even though he knew what was basically going on, and the paralysis that he had, the burden of I should do something. Am I passive? Am I part of this already? Am I a good participant, or am I all these kind of things that go through our mind? It's really beautiful. I think it's too long to read, but he wants to work now on the idea of a kind of spectatorness which is natural. So understanding how you can be a spectator without this burden of hierarchy of feeling or doing or understanding yourself in that situation. Maybe there's a few sentences that from my unique position in the performance arose several questions on the nature of spectatorship. In the production of Synthesizer R, which was the name of this iteration, did I play my role well? More broadly, what makes a good spectator? Is it he who is passive, who stays out of the way and limits his relation with the work to observation and reflection? Or rather, is the good spectator she who intercepts and disrupts the work, imbuing it with subjectivity that only one outside of production can bring? The former is easier, which perhaps alone makes it the incorrect choice, yet demanding the latter would produce a thoroughly in genuine spectatorship. I could not say that what my reaction would be if I had walked into synthesizer art unprepared or an unbeliever. If I was not invited, I wonder how long I would have stayed. I could not stay. To me, the performance was a sacred ritual. One I could not take my eyes off for a moment. My hair whipped from left to right as I searched for my own personal cue. On other days, a single source of content is not enough to keep my mind occupied. During Synthesizer R, I was fulfilled to watch a line emerge on a blank page, especially when the rhythm of the production became familiar. It felt as if I, the line, its subject, the hand that drew it, were all responding to the same shared physicality. I don't know if you want to, if some of you that you were there have some thoughts you would like to add to your experience being there. We have some great shots from all of you. There's Magenta and Rachel. So these are, yeah, thanks for contributing those images to our archive. So that's now in the archive, which is going to go online. But I'm curious if any of you had some thoughts after you came back, or if you have some memories of what you experienced or some observations. Did you recognize how fragmented it was, and were you putting it together or just accepting it, or were you trying to figure out what was going on and like seeing a line drawn from an anonymous hand somewhere in Berlin, and then finding the line on the male model that he drew, like all these things that were durational. So this is a long performance over a whole weekend. So there's 3 days. Each time we had iterations. And it's like from 12 to 4, basically, each day. So there's like, you could come and go, and that part was very interesting for me. Also, I love being part of what's going on there, but also being able to watch. So this is a simultaneous experience, which is once you're in it, it's not immediate, but once you're in it, it's quite magnetic, and you don't want to get out of it. There was sound there was sound with this one, but we didn't have it. I guess that's true. Do you want to discuss that? Anything? Any observations about Arena, or going forward with ideas of democratic structures and activations? Or you have any questions, just practical ones? If not, it's already an hour and 15 minutes. That's much longer than I thought. So I'm happy to show just a few more things and not really talk. And I'm just going to tell you what they are, and then it's over, and we can ask some more questions. This is a piece that was also at DIA, but in Chelsea. So in the city, New York City, it's called Particulates. It's lasers, high-powered lasers, green lasers in a rotational hyperbolic paraboloid, and it has a water element, which is mainly like condensation. So I found in the first time I did it was in Liverpool, and it was in a cistern, so a very, very wet environment. And I noticed that the water, when it's binding with elements or dust or marble dust, at DIA it was marble, it's an old marble cutting place. And with water, it sparks in this very beautiful way. So in India, and this one's at the Hammer Museum just last year. And this one was open to the street, and the other ones were enclosed. But water is an important element in the whole thing. And it's also, I mean, I was interested in being able to draw in space infinitely. So this is why I was using a laser. I can say more about that, but we can just go on. This is a public project in Germany. It's called Mönchengladbach is the name of the town. And this was an urban space which was we redid the whole, it's not a big town, but it has the museum Abteiberg there, which is a fantastic museum. And this was called Donkey's Way, and it's they're bronze donkeys. Corbusier, who I mentioned in my text and who has been very important to me, talked a lot about donkeys and wrote about donkeys. and just in a simple way, just like donkeys, when they're going towards something, they'll go around a rock, and modernism would cut through it. This kind of like illustration, but it's more complicated than that. This is a very, very popular project. It's the first figuration that I did, and everyone was kind of surprised about it. But again, it's in the context of modernism and I put in those stripes. I don't know if I went too long on that one, but I put in the street stripes, which are also the city of Algiers, the opus from Corbusier. So they're relating to another master plan for a city. And now they want to renovate this whole, and it's not so long ago that we did this project. I was talking to Jack's class about that today. Then this is in Cologne. This is a carbon obelisk, which is near the train station and the cathedral, which is very popular also. Funny project. I have done other obelisks. This one is in a city in a quite charged context of the dome. And so every time we were trying to make a foundation for this project, I mean, thank God it was carbon because it's not heavy and I didn't have to go very far down to put a foundation in. But every time, I just love this story. Like, we opened the hole in the street so many times, and we didn't know who owned what there. And it's also a Roman area, so there was always this archaeological group there, and then the electrical and the telephone, and nobody knew what was what. And so we just cover it up again and do nothing for another 4 months. All to say that I am amused by these processes, actually, and that they are frustrating for most people, but I find that engagement in the level of debate. Sometimes it's very heavy, and other times just absurdity. But I like that so many people are involved in it, and that has this broad discussion somehow before it arrives. So it's not like a UFO that comes and it's there. Somehow the community knows it's there and is either for it or against it. And usually it's about half-half, and it's always political. And I find it super fun, actually. This one is the biggest one. It took 10 years to make. Politically, not literally, to produce the piece itself. It was 3 months, but it was a competition. And in Germany, they have a thing called Kunstausbau. So when they spend a lot of money on infrastructure road system, which they did in Munich, they put a competition out in a certain percentage. This one was 0.1% of the total budget, but it was €1 million, which is huge for a competition. But in the grand scheme of budgeting, this allowed me to think about going taller than what is assumed as a sculpture scale. And part of being able to do that was in the program, because in the program, the tram has to run through the bottom, and there's highway underneath as well. So I decided that carbon would be helpful, again, for foundation problems, because I didn't have the opportunity to go down because there was a highway underneath, and then there's a tram in the center. And I just said, well, I don't want to articulate a kind of special doorway for the tram to go through. So it has the height it has because of just geometry going up. It was controversial, of course, and at one point, it was always called Tower, and then that was too much. And I started to call it Mae West, which was a kind of decoy turn to get them talking about something else, actually. So, the politics. And it was in the newspapers, with lots of cartoons. And I thought that was a huge success. I thought now I am a successful artist. I made it in the comics section of a newspaper with a project. Really serious. That was a big deal for me. And I think the last, I don't know what else there is.
I have a couple of videos.
Yeah, I'll just show you this one short. Was the proposal rendering video that Jerry really loves. So it has music, and this was really long time ago. So the So this was shown in the city hall in Munich among all the politicians. My German wasn't very good at the time, not that it's that much better now, but it was scary. So I used my visual acuity and played this instead of trying to speak about the project, to like really a sea of men from the politics of Munich, which is highly conservative. And it was a lot of fun to make this project, actually. Is there the other one where it's constructed or no? Yeah, we'll just play that. If you do have questions, there's no sound on it. But I think we've said a lot, and it's been a real pleasure sharing lots of things with you. If you have questions, we can do that, or just enjoy the evening. I have a lot of posters here from Arena, if we want a view, or some of you want some of them. They're free for you to take. Please do. Feel free to take one. I was going to give it to the person with the best questions, but I feel like everyone's not in the mood to answer or question anything. So this is the structure being built in January, I think 2010. Bitter January colds. We had to stop construction in the middle of the night and start over the next day. We had to close freeways, highways for these extremely long carbon fiber tubes that were produced in another part of the area, but like 2 hours away. So everything had to be done at night. And it was really hated. And actually, I have a 20-minute film if anybody wants to stay long to watch. We did a really beautiful film, like high quality of the reactions in the neighborhood of the people. And we're doing another film of the reactions now, which is 14 years later. And it's hilarious, actually, and kind of tragic. The comments, we went into the people's houses and asked them what they thought about Mae West. Super controversial. And you could kind of follow the propaganda lines that were in the newspaper that were just being consumed and put again out into our film, or like if opinions were being made and expressed that were just already printed in the newspapers and were politically inclined. Now Munich loves it. You ask a taxi driver, they say, oh, you have to go to Mae West on the Effnerplatz. Like this is it's also in their skyline, so there's postcards of it. I get lots of photos. There's a lot of amateur photographing of the geometry. So popular opinion can migrate and can change, and it just takes a lot of time, I guess. I haven't been back to Munich, though. I think it was pretty traumatic in a lot of ways for me, but I'm hoping to go in the next month to visit. Yeah.
What year was that?
2010. And they've taken care of it. I mean, they're doing maintenance. They care about it, so it's really a great sign for.
So where are they welding up there?
There is a steel ring at the top, which actually is not structural. It has to do with lightning, like blitz. And so there are lightning, and there's also interior heaters because they were very concerned about snow piling up and falling on people and cars. And we spent most of the time making, no one had built a structure like this, so we were in the position to make all the tests. So it was more like 8 years of testing. And part of it was politically motivated to make us test it, but in the end, I'm quite happy that we have this like book of how these structures can be made and what we found in terms of stresses. But we had to test things for like, if the tram goes wild and 10 cars decide to crash into it and an airplane hits it at the same time, is it still standing? Like these kind of things. It's all really, I mean, it's frustrating at the moment. You're like, oh no. It was hard to keep interested in the project because it took so long, but I did a lot of other things. I had other shows which I did material about this structure made merchandise, all kinds of things to keep it alive in a more visual, like art context. What? Drinking glasses, yes. Shot glasses, yeah. Shaped like, you know. Yeah, they weren't big sellers, however. It's beer there, big beers. Yeah. All right, everyone. Thanks very much. Thank you. It's a pleasure. All right. Don't forget your posters. Don't be shy.
Have any questions?
I think there's too much information in their brains. Or they're asleep.